Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tournament Center here at Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar, Milwaukee. I'm Brian David Marshall, and I am joined by Pro Tour Hall of Famer Luis Scott-Vargas, better known the worldwide simply as LSV. Luis, welcome to the Tournament Center. We brought you here today to talk about Standard and what goes into building a deck for a Pro Tour.
Yeah, and today we're recording this on Thursday. This is the day before the Pro Tour, so I get to say a lot of things about decks that I don't even know which one I'm going to play yet.
So you still, even we're less than, maybe about 12 hours away from you having to turn in your list and all that kind of good stuff. How can that be that you could be this close there and still not know which deck to play?
Well, a big part of testing for the Pro Tour is playing enough games with all the different decks and all the different cards so that at the end, 12 hours before the Pro Tour, you can make decisions without having to go and retest a bunch of stuff. Because you don't have time for that. 12 hours, I want to get 8 hours of sleep. That does not leave me a ton of time to make decisions based on playtesting. It's more that we know which cards are good against which decks, and we know how these specific decks interact, and then at the end, a lot of the changes you make are just based on that.
And how much of that's also getting a feel for what people are talking about, and how much intel do you soak up in those last hours before Pro Tour?
Not a ton. People are pretty closed-mouthed these days for good reason, and a lot of the lists that you'll see online are not representative of the list you'll exactly see in the Pro Tour. Some are. I mean, you can definitely get good information by looking at Magic Online results, for example, but we expect people to have a little bit different decks than what we see there. So a lot of it is just trying to estimate what we think is going to show up, and then maybe tune the last couple slots against it.
You worked with Team Channel Fireball, obviously, as you have since for the last half a decade, but it was kind of a slightly different lineup, or a slightly the same lineup, really. Tell us about the team for this event.
So even before there was a Team Channel Fireball, even before there was a Channel Fireball at all, myself, Paul Cheon, Josh Adler-Layton, and David Ochoa, we used to test for Pro Tours together. This is back when people didn't have any idea who we were. We had very few results under our belts.
That guy from Nationals.
We were certainly not qualified for all the Pro Tours, but that was our testing team, and we've kind of gone back to that. On top of those four people, we also have Eric Froelich and Matt Nass. So that's our core. It's actually really small. This is a smaller team than normal because we wanted to test locally in Denver, where the three of us live. And to that end, we did have some help from Brandon Nelson and Michael Jacob, actually, whose names you might recognize, because they pitched in even though they weren't coming to the Pro Tour.
Convenient local gamers.
Convenient, at work.
Yeah.
5 of the 6 of those people I just named, work at the same place.
That's very nice. So now you get through this testing process, 2 intense weeks, and you're on the eve of the Pro Tour. You have how many decks that you're really going to choose from here? Well,
so the decks we're going to talk about, we've got 4 different decks. These are the main ones we worked on. What we're going to play is probably narrowed down to about 2 of these 4 decks. So
everybody on the team is going to play one of 2 of these 4 decks in your mind?
I think that we might have one exception to that, but I think in general, yes, everyone's going to play one of the. There's 2 of these 4 decks, and everyone's going to play one of those decks.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at what the output was here from Team Channel Fireball. So we're going to start with Jess Guy. What are some of the new cards that come in for a Jess Guy list like this, and what are the cards that make you want to play a deck like this that might be leaving the format?
So Jeskai with black is going to be one of the most common decks at the Pro Tour, but this list is pretty significantly different than normal ones. This is a Jeskai Mentor deck. We've got 4 Monastery Mentors, and then also 4 Seeker of the Way. So we're leaning really hard on prowess, and to that end, Magmatic Insight is a big part of that. 1 red, discard a land, draw 2 cards. And that fuels your Treasure Cruises and Murderous Cuts because of, the most impactful 5 cards in Battle for Zendikar, Prairie Stream, Smoldering Marsh, Sunken Hollow, combined with the other 2. And that lets these Jeskai decks play black cards in them and have a better mana base than they used to because your Polluted Deltas and your Flooded Strands and your Bloodstained Mires can go get dual lands.
I always find it interesting when we get to the first Pro Tour of a new season and there's a new set coming in, and a lot of times the big impact is cards from the previous set that maybe got squoze out in the middle. So maybe some of the cards right now that we don't see from Battle for Zendikar maybe a year from now, but Monastery Mentor is a card that really, it's done a little bit, but it hasn't really gotten its day in the sun yet.
Yeah, and the reason Mentor is good here is because all the fetch lands make all the delve cards better, all the delve cards better make the Mentors better. And then another card that we're not playing currently, but it is going to be in most Jeskai lists is Crackling Doom, and that's kind of a new card because now all these decks can play it when they couldn't before. Specifically from Battle, we've got 2 copies of Radiant Flames and 2 copies of Dragon Master Outcast. which they're going to be somewhere in the 75 for sure, as well as Dispels, which is actually really well positioned right now. It's not a card that always makes the main deck. It's a card I love having in the format, though.
And so Radiant Flames can do how much? It can do 3 damage.
Most commonly, it deals 2, actually.
Yeah.
Because if you cast a Radiant Flames for 2 by paying like red, red, blue, or red, blue, blue, so you intentionally don't want to converge for 3, your Seeker of the Waves survive, your Monastery Mentor survive because of prowess.
That's awesome.
And sometimes you even have a turn where you go like Magmatic Insight, Radiant Flames for 3, and your Seeker survives.
Dragon Master Outcast. Talk about that card real quickly.
It's seeing playing a lot of Jeskai lists because of the combination of Ojutai's Command, Dragon Master Outcast, just a hugely powerful late game. You play this 1/1, or you even discard it to Jace, ideally. And then at the end of once you have 6 mana in play, at the end of their turn, you just Ojutai's Command it right back into play and starts making dragons immediately. It gives this deck a closer, which it was missing for a while.
And that's not a card I've heard people talking about a lot out of Battle for Zendikar, but it sounds when you...
Oh, you're going to see a lot of dragons this weekend. Yeah. I think that we're not alone in summoning Dragon Master Outcasts.
Awesome. Give this deck a likelihood score for you.
This is currently the deck I'm most likely to play, and I think there are a number of people on our team are going to play this deck. So you're going to see some Monastery Mentors this tournament.
Awesome. Okay, let's take a look at your next option here, Rally. So what does that mean? I assume Rally the Ancestors?
We call it Rally. These are the functional names. When you're testing, you don't want to get too elaborate.
Yeah.
But this is a Rally the Ancestors deck. So you're basically, this is the only white card on the deck. You're splashing a double white card. You're paying 4 or 5 mana to bring back all your creatures from your graveyard into play until your next upkeep. What that does for you is it gives you a bunch of creatures to sacrifice to Nantuko Husk, which kills your opponent with Zulaport Cutthroat. Alternately, even if you don't kill your opponent, you can also draw a bunch of cards off Grim Haruspex and then Elvish Visionary, scry a bunch with Catacomb Sifter, and even get a Jace back, and then you can flip Jace, and then the Planeswalker Jace doesn't go away.
Right.
So this deck is very interesting because it uses Collected Company, Rally the Ancestors, and Jace, and a bunch of terrible creatures. That is what this deck is. I mean, how often do you see Sidisi's Faithful running around?
Sure. So Catacomb Sifter, though, a 4 of...
Catacomb Sifter is really important because, first of all, it gives you 2 creatures immediately. So when you're getting beat down and you collect a company to rally it back, it's multiple creatures, or you just cast it turn 3. Also, the scrying is really good because often one rally won't kill your opponent. This isn't the rally decks of last season where you had Mogi's Marauder to give it Nantuko Husk haste and just kill them in 1 hit. Your creatures do 1 damage per with Zulaport Cutthroat. So you're not often 20ing them. What you're doing is getting back, let's say, Sifter, Visionary, Husk, Cutthroat. That's already draining them for 4 or 5 damage and getting to scry a bunch to find your next rally, to find Grim Haruspex, to draw a bunch of cards. Jace can let you flashback rally or company. It's a very synergistic deck. This is the deck that Matt Nass is going to play.
It's Jason 56 cards.
Yes, we knew, well, 3 of the 4 decks we have today have 4 Jaces, and every deck everyone's considering at this point has 4 Jaces. Okay. Jace is just the best card in the format.
And one of the big predators for Jace was Searing Blood at the last Pro Tour.
Yeah, and Searing Blood's no longer with us.
Yeah.
So Jace, even though there's going to be a lot of Fiery Impulses and Wild Slashes, Jace is still the best card.
Give me a likelihood score on this deck.
This is the deck I'm second most likely to play.
Okay, so, and the deck that Matt Nass is most likely to have played.
100%.
Okay.
He was locked in like 3 days into testing.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the other options. So Esper, this is a deck that your team really put onto the map at the last Pro Tour.
Dragon Esper or Esper Dragons in Brussels, Pro Tour. A bunch of our team played it and did very well with it. I unfortunately was not one of those people.
Yeah, but a handful of top 16s, top 17.
Yeah, Josh, top 16. The overall win percentage was quite good, and that's because of the combination of Silumgar's Scorn, Foul Tongue Invocation, and Ojutai is just very powerful. And that remains true. If you look at this deck, it does not have very many cards from Battle for Zendikar in it.
Scattered to the Winds is a new card I see in there.
And Complete Disregard.
Yeah.
But past that, the biggest impact, again, is the mana base. Prairie Stream and Sunken Hollow means that you can actually play Esper. Esper Dragons used to not actually play white cards besides Ojutai because you could cast off Haven of the Spirit Dragon.
Right.
But now you can actually play cards like Utter End and white sideboard cards.
Ojutai's Command seems like a big upward mover, like just on the few lists we've seen already.
Yeah, Jace is just becoming better and better, and Ojutai's Command combines perfectly with Jace. At this point, I do not believe any of us are going to play Esper. Paul Ciano's the last champion. He played it online all day today and was just like, yeah, I don't think Esper's got it.
Okay, so let's take a look at the last option here. This is Red-Green Landfall, and it is pretty much what it sounds like.
Well, we just took every card that had Landfall on it.
Slide Runner, Side Leopard, Snapping Gnarlid.
Yeah. And Retreat to Valakut actually was a surprisingly good card in this deck. So this deck is very similar to the Atarka red decks. It even has still Atarka's Command, Monastery Swiftspear, Abbot, and then the Berserk Bloodlust combo, Become Immense, and Temur Battle Rage.
A limited staple for you, right?
Yeah, that is actually true. And this deck does that part of the deck better than the red decks do, because it has, naturally, with Slide Runners and Gnarlids, these 4 power creatures just by themselves. And if you save up fetch lands, so you sack them all in the same turn, you can have 5/5. Retreat to Valakut also stacks really well. The disadvantage of this deck is it doesn't interact. If you notice, there's not a single card in this deck that can remove an opposing permanent from the battlefield. So the only interaction it has is Retreat to Valakut makes their creatures unable to block, which is actually very good.
Right.
That being said, I think because the Battle Rage Become Immense combo is so prevalent in the normal red decks, people are adjusting to that. We expect a lot of Murderous Cuts, we expect Surge of Righteousness, we expect Jeskai Charm. I don't think we want to play this deck in a field full of those. So at this point, we've moved on, and I don't think anyone's going to play this.
But this is kind of one of your baseline decks, maybe when you start testing.
Yeah.
Like, what is the field going to look like? What can people do?
Yeah, when we wanted to see how good we were against red, we tested against a normal Atarka red list that just doesn't have leopards or gnarlids. But when we wanted to test this deck, we found that it was pretty good even when it didn't draw its spells. Any combination of lands and creatures, you end up with 1 mana 3/3s and 2 mana 4/4s. The problem is this deck just didn't have enough interaction, and I don't think the combo kill was good enough.
Okay. All right, give me a prediction. If one of these decks is going to make the top 8 this weekend, which one will it have been?
Oh, Rally for sure.
Okay. All right, Luis Scott-Vargas, thanks so much for coming and sharing your playtesting experience with us here at the Tournament Center.